Good morning and welcome to Inside South Florida. I'm Dave Azer. Today, if you're having trouble getting your point across, our communications expert will give you some great advice on how to make you a better speaker. Plus, an eye specialist has some tips on how to keep your eyes in tip-top shape. And also, we'll feature one of the tallest buildings in all of South Florida, plus an extra special inside look at the new season of America's Next Top Model and some local auditions right down here. That and more as Inside South Florida starts now. South Floridian Virgil Scudder makes a career teaching business leaders how to communicate better, but those tips can work for anybody. Here he is to talk about that and his new book, World Class Communication, which was named one of the top 25 business books of 2012. Virgil, how you doing, buddy?
Fine, thanks, David.
It's good to have you here.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Now, you must be a big deal because you have your own method, the Scudder Method. What is that?
Well, I kind of didn't recognize it as such, and then one day one of my colleagues said, you know, what you're teaching, there is a method. And basically, it's simplicity, it's directness, it's direct response to questions, it's illustrating what you say. And so it's a system for communication, and the foundation of it is the 4 C's. Every communication should be clear, concise, credible, and delivered with confidence. So no matter what I'm working on, with what kind of executive, I say, have we hit the 4 C's?
And I would imagine that message seems so simple, you know, it's like a duh, of course, but
yeah.
When people are not seasoned and trained, the message kind of gets lost.
You want to test? Ask somebody who hasn't practiced it to explain his business to you in 45 seconds.
The elevator pitch kind of
The
thing,
elevator
right?
pitch.
Right.
Very few can do it. And if he can do it, he's worked on it.
Right.
But if he hasn't worked on it, he can't do it. I find, David, it's harder to explain my business than yours. And I struggled for a long time to say, what exactly do I do? What do I do in a sentence or two? Because I work in media training, presentation training, crisis communication, investor communication. So I finally said, we've got to get a slogan. So I came up with, we make executives better communicators. Now, if you're going to improve on that, I'll pay you for it.
No, that's pretty good. In fact, you've dedicated an entire book to it. Why did you choose CEOs?
I chose CEOs because there are a lot of books on communication out in the markets. There wasn't one out there on CEOs, and I've had the privilege of working with so many of them over the years. And I thought it would be a different approach. Well, the biggest reason for CEOs is that nobody gets tested like the boss, whether it's the President of the United States or whether it's the CEO of a company. They have the toughest challenges, therefore they are the best models. And today, you're not going to get to the top of a big corporation without being pretty good at communicating. So I tried to combine my experience of teaching them and what they taught me. And I interview a number of any CEO that you see quoted in the book, I have worked with. And so I've learned a lot from them. Then I said, let's get their perspective on it. So I got quotes from them on communication.
What are the 2 or 3 most important things that a CEO or any business leader who might be watching the show should focus on with regards to communicating their message?
Candor, being upfront, getting there early. And when I talk to various CEOs and I ask them, what is the quality, if you were looking for your successor, what qualities would you look for? And I got one surprise. A lot of things didn't surprise me. Vision, experience, and so on. Humility. Mm. And so I put it in the book.
Wow. That's really funny you say that because I was about to give you some examples of some business leaders that I thought of and I was going to see, how you felt they did. So you say humility, now I say Donald Trump. Right? Those 2 words that are not usually synonymous.
Donald Trump is a brand. Mm-hmm. Donald Trump is not a CEO. Well, he is.
Right.
But he is primarily a showman. He is the brand. If Donald Trump were the head of General Motors, Donald Trump wouldn't last 3 days with that persona. But it's right for what he does, and he's built quite an empire with it. So that's an exception.
What do you think of Richard Branson?
I think Richard Branson is a very good communicator, and I think he's a terrific businessman. I have a lot of respect for Branson.
And the last one would be Mark Cuban.
Cuban's fun. Cuban's got so much success that he can say, I don't care what you think. And I think he's very effective. I like Mark, but again, if the average person walked in and did a Mark Cuban imitation, I'd
right.
say, no, I don't think this is going to be right for you. The personality has to be tailored. The idea is to bring out what's good in them, not try to make them different people.
All right, let's talk some nonverbals, body language, posture, things like that. What are some good things to do, some bad things to do? What have you seen?
Well, quite a few things. First of all is eye contact. You notice I look you straight in the eye. I'm not looking off the camera. I'm not looking over here. I'm talking to you. Now, I am going to look at the camera, though, to make another point.
Okay.
Because another is gestures. Gesture. Talk with your hands. Be Italian. Don't be flailing. Give examples.
Be expressive, but not obnoxious.
Right.
Not too much of this.
That's the word I'm looking for.
Right.
Yeah. Pace is critically important. If you speak too fast, you're not given credit for being perhaps as smart as you are. One of the smartest guys I ever worked with, I had a very bad initial impression on him because he went like that, and I thought, this guy doesn't know anything. Well, I was wrong, but usually you're not. Usually the fast talker doesn't have that much to say. At least that's the perception. People make decisions on perceptions. And the perception of the individual has a lot to do with how successful a person is. And one thing I talk about in the book is presence. What is presence? What is executive presence? Well, let me give you a couple of examples. In fact, I'll quiz you.
Oh boy.
Name a couple of presidents you thought have had good presence and a couple that haven't.
Bill Clinton. Great presence.
Totally agree.
And this has nothing to do with party affiliation or anything like that. Just the first one that came to mind. I would say George W. Bush, not great presence.
Not, right.
Yeah, so those are two that just jumped out at me.
Okay, those are two on my list.
Okay.
Now the other two, on the winner's side, was Ronald Reagan.
Okay.
And on the loser's side, Jimmy Carter. Neither one had the presence. And one thing I talk about in the book is when Bill Clinton or Ronald Reagan walked in the room, you knew the president was in the room. Mm-hmm. You didn't have that same feeling of awe with the other two.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't that why many people think John F. Kennedy became president? Because when he had his debate against Nixon, it was televised, and maybe without TV he might not have performed better, but on TV he just looked the part.
People who heard it on the radio said Nixon won, overwhelmingly. People who saw it on TV said Kennedy won overwhelmingly. Yeah, it was the presence. Nixon was sweating, he was nervous. He seemed uncertain of where he was going. That absolutely, first TV president, and now we have the first cyber president.
Talk to me about apologizing. This is pretty interesting. If I understand you correctly, most people think apologizing is a sign of weakness, a bad thing, but maybe not always the case.
Let me give you a good example. Toyota failed to apologize. When it had the car defects, first of all, they made a lot of mistakes. It was a bad crisis move from beginning to end. But one of the things they didn't do was come out quickly enough with an admission of what the problem was and an apology. Apology makes you stronger. If you apologize, that shows you have the confidence to say, okay, I'm fallible. I can make mistakes. And one of the things that I tell people is if you do your best, you're an honest person, you do your best, and you're willing to apologize for mistakes, then you have nothing else to apologize for.
BP comes to mind immediately.
Absolutely.
Right, that's another case where they didn't jump out in front of it.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And then there were some unfortunate quotes and comments in there, like, I want my life back.
Or the guy said, I haven't taken a day off in weeks or whatever he said, yeah.
Well, you're alive, aren't you?
Right.
And so that went down very badly. But again, he should have apologized immediately. Didn't do it. Go way back, Exxon Valdez. Same thing. Exxon started off with denial. It isn't going to be that bad. Then they saw it was. Then they didn't apologize fast enough. They blamed the captain, said he was drunk. They later in court said he was sober, and they make up your mind. And so a good straight apology a friend of mine wrote a book on the power of apology. And it says it sets the tone, it sets the stage for healing. And that's exactly what it does.
I wish we could spend much more time together because this is fascinating. We've got to go, but before we do, people want to read this book or they want to get a hold of you, how can they go ahead and do that?
Okay, they can get a hold of me by virgil@virgilscudder.com, my email. They can get the book in Barnes & Noble or various other bookstores, and they can get a Nook or Kindle version from Amazon and Barnes & Noble.
It's great having you here. I'm going to look you in the eyes. My posture's going to be upright, and I'm going to shake your hand and say, it was a great time. Thanks for coming in.
Love your presence, Dave.
All right, take care.
Thank you.
When we come back, how much do you know about your retinas and the role they serve with your vision? We'll find out next.